Welcome into another episode of the Starting 502 podcast. It is a Jacob takeover tonight here. Jacob Lane, Jake Hook, coming to you with tons to talk about on the basketball side of things for Louisville, coming off of a victory in senior day. We're going to get into that tonight, but really spend the majority of our time discussing the ACC Tournament, which is kicked off and ongoing over the next couple of days with Louisville's matchup pending an opponent. We'll talk a little bit about that, as well as what could be ahead of them in the ACC tournament. Before we do that, Jake, how are you, man? You stayed out of Nashville this weekend, and I heard that you came up north to Louisville or east, or I don't know what direction is it. North? I don't really know.
It's just directly north. Yeah, Bowling Green is right smack dab in the middle bottom of the state, and so you just go straight north.
Yeah, so no Broadway, Jake, this weekend. We got you up to Louisville. How was your trip for the game?
It was great. It was my first time getting to see the team all year, obviously. 2-hour drive makes it a little difficult. And like you said, I'm always in Nashville, so never that many opportunities to that is the worst part about not living in Louisville is any Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday night game, like I've got no chance of making it all. So It was great. It was great to see the crowd back. I went to 2 or 3 Kenny Payne, Louisville home games over the last couple of years.
I'm sorry.
And the best part about that was you could spend $8 on a ticket and you could be 4 rows from the game. So that was cool. But I mean, outside of that, it was so cool to have that Yum Center pop back whenever you go on a 9-0 run or whenever James Scott dunks the ball. So that was cool. And it was great. I thought they did a really good job with the seniors and celebrating them on senior night as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Before we dive into things here on Starting 502, make sure that you're subscribed to the State of Louisville YouTube channel. You can do that right here below. If you've made it this far, go ahead and like and subscribe, comment on the video below. Let us know what you think about senior day here for Louisville. In my opinion, one of the most iconic pictures was from our photographer, Jared Anderson, of Chucky Hepburn kissing the cardinal bird on his way out in the final seconds of the game. Absolutely fantastic. Make sure you're following Starting 502 podcast on X at Starting 502. I'm starting to use X a little bit more. I'm trying to get, I know it's always forever Twitter, but I work in paid advertising.
Sound normal.
Right. I'm working paid advertising, and now X is kind of the name that most people are trying to be correct. So make sure you're following us there. Check out stateoflouisville.com for recaps and other articles covering the Cardinals. But Jake, just give me your high-level thoughts on the Stanford game and what you saw from Louisville. Low-scoring game. It seems silly to say compared to what we've seen the last couple of weeks, but a game in which you win by 20 against a kind of middle-of-the-pack ACC team. What were your thoughts?
Stanford's not very good outside of Maxime Renaud, which I knew that coming into it, but I don't think I knew to the degree of how much talent they lacked outside of him and how much he has covered them up. Because, I mean, you take away Maxime Renaud from that Stanford team, and, God, I don't know if they win. I mean, they went above 500 in conference. I don't know if they win 5 conference game without him.
If I'm not mistaken, their record was pretty similar to like SMU and some of the other teams right around that area, North Carolina. I mean, they beat North Carolina.
They're the 7th seed in the tournament, and SMU's the 6th. So yeah, they've got to be close.
Right. I mean, their team. I knew that they had a bunch of transfers that were coming in that were not big names, right? But guys that like Jalen Blakes played at Duke for forever and was never really a big part of their team, right? Sellers from USC was another one. But Renaud, I mean, I couldn't believe that they retained him last year. Like the bag that they had to drop to get him to come back. Because if you remember, he went into the portal very early and was the number 1 player in the portal and then surprisingly went back to Stanford. But you're right. Aside from him, they're not very good. I thought they'd be the worst team in the ACC all offseason, and they were not that. But that's mostly because of him. I
will say also shocked at these 2 California teams. I guess, I don't know, just like stupid prejudice in my mind. Like you think California, West Coast team, probably a little softer style of basketball. Like, nope, 2 of the ugliest, most physical basketball games we've had these last 2 were Cal and Stanford.
Yeah, absolutely. But I mean, again, it speaks a testament to the coaching job of Pat Kelsey and the ability of this team to adapt to that, considering the injury issues without Rain Smith. Of course, the attrition that Louisville has had on their roster this year. If you saw the data that came out over this weekend on X, I'm gonna make sure I go ahead and emphasize that again and try to practice my lingo here. But Louisville has lost, what was it, the most production, and been able to far exceed the loss of that production throughout the season. So it really is, once again, just a matter of this team adapting and being able to play really any style of basketball.
Yeah, I also love, obviously we know, Pat Kelsey and everyone knew, Maxime Renaud was the only guy on this team that you really had to be worried about. And I mean, it seemed like every time he touched the ball, he was in hell. I mean, he got a few open looks, obviously, but nothing was ever easy for him. There were a lot of doubles or little stab downs at him when he was in the post. Forced 5 turnovers on a center, which is kind of crazy. So really impressive game. And we only shot 5 of 22 from 3, and we still win the game by 20. And I know Stanford's not that great of a team, but to beat any team by 20 and shoot that poorly, I mean, God, if we shot that poorly against Lenore Ryan last year, we lose by 10. Oh, wait, we did. But yeah, it was great to see. And I don't know if I've ever seen or heard a louder crowd than whenever Chucky kissed the floor.
Yeah. Yeah, honestly, and it speaks volumes to this team and how much people cared, because if you know anything about Louisville sports, the joke is on ourselves, right? That, fans try to hit the exits as quickly as they can to get out of there, right? But most people stayed behind to watch the festivities that took place after the game, and you're exactly right. I mean, that moment was everything that fans wanted, and the appreciation that those players showed to the university and to the prestigiousness of the basketball program, and understanding the weight of what they've accomplished this season, and being able to get Louisville back on the map. It was the perfect ending. It was beautiful, and it really was kind of the cherry on top to a fantastic regular season. And obviously there's a lot to take away from this game. You only have 3 players score in double figures. And really this game was all about Terrence Edwards and Chucky Hepburn. I mean, those were really the only 2 guys that were getting anything going. You look at the shot distribution for this one, and Terrence Edwards was 6 of 17 and 1 for 8. He was trying so hard to keep that hot 3-point shooting that really had, kind of helped him into some of those big games over the last couple of weeks. And then Chucky Hepburn goes 6 of 16. So, again, for Louisville to win by 20, it speaks volumes to the job that they did, on the glass, and limiting, as you mentioned, Raynaud, and forcing 5 turnovers. But, dude, the easiest bet of the night for that game was Maxime Raynaud, 10-plus rebounds. I think I had it at like minus 185 or 180 on DraftKings. I just hammered that. I mean, that was easy money. Now, not a lot of money, but easy money. Anything else that stood out to you? Any concerns about, I think I ask you this every time I come on, but any concerns about the injury to Rain Smith? Obviously, we saw the video on Coach Foy's Instagram of him in the gym working, doing the bike. That right there that he did, Jake, would have killed me. I would have died. I don't think I could have survived that. I'm not even kidding you. Played pickleball on Sunday, and I feel like I'm falling apart. But, any concern about that? And then the shooting woes that have kind of started to hit Louisville?
Yeah, I've got 2 good ankles, and I could not do that. So I'm not sure how he's doing it. No, I'm not super concerned. I know I did run into Rain's family at a bar on Broadway right before the game, and I recommended where they go because it was really packed. I was like, hey, there's some spots down there. I should have said, hey, how's your son's ankle? What are we thinking a week from now? How does that sound? Does that sound too quick? But I did not. Do you have
his X-ray that I could? Can I see his X-ray? What's the therapy sessions like? How many times a day is he going to rehab? Mm-hmm. Have we gotten him in online classes only so that he can make sure that he's just rehabbing 24/7? Yeah, I'm with you, man. Those are the important questions.
Yeah, I know. I was rude for not asking those things. I wouldn't. I don't know. I know he was in the boot at the game, but then he was in the boot in the video. So I feel like everything is leaning towards him playing. I think if we assumedly play, it's between Stanford or Cal. Assume we play Stanford. We obviously very clearly can beat them without him, so I wouldn't be super worried about that quarterfinal game. But that semifinal game against Clemson or SMU without Rain, that's when you would really start to get concerned.
Yeah, no, absolutely, and that really kind of is a perfect transition. I mean, look, we could talk about this game for Louisville for a long time, and at this point, you've heard most of the takes, right? It's a couple days of sports talk radio in Louisville. You've seen the stats, you've seen the senior day moments. I mean, it really was a fantastic day all around. You take care of business and you get a victory, and now you walk into the ACC tournament. And as you mentioned, right, you get a potential matchup between, or you get the winner, of Stanford and Cal, who knocked off Virginia Tech in a really, really close game. I texted you earlier the kind of rundown for tonight, and I actually thought Virginia Tech won because when I walked away from the TV, they were winning, and then I went back and saw that it was Cal. But for Louisville, as the 2 seed, assuming you take care of business again. Well, let me ask you this: against Stanford, anything? What's the concern there? Say you do get Stanford, or quickly, if you can squeeze both teams in, what's the one thing you're not worried about, and what's the one thing you would be worried about in each of those situations?
Against Stanford, really not worried about a ton. I think we saw us play a C+ game at best, and we just beat them by 20. I guess the only concern would be if Maxime Reynaud just went off for like 35 points on a really efficient night, which he could do, but I wouldn't imagine Pat Kelsey allowing that. With Cal, I think a little bit more of a concern. They're one of the worst shooting teams in all of college basketball. So, I mean, I think I was watching one of the guys on Twitter, College Basketball Wagers or something like that. He tweets about Louisville a lot. But he was saying, like, if Cal can just, like, improve just a little bit on their shooting, with how physical they are, how good they are on the boards, and how solid their defense is, they could actually be a surprise team. So if any of the two teams would scare me, it would actually be the worst ranked team of anyone in this ACC tournament, and that's Cal. And it's because they just muck up the game. They're so physical. Refs aren't going to call every single foul. What's his name? Who's the big man who's like 24 years old for Cal?
Oh, man, you're really putting me on the spot here. I get them confused all the time. Is that Lee Dort? Or no, it's Sissoko that for Cal.
Yeah.
Sissoko. Yeah,
he
from
had
Michigan
4
State.
fouls with like 5 minutes left to go in that game against Virginia Tech today. 3 very clearly fouls on him either did not get called or would get called on somebody else. Madi Sissoko. Yeah, so those dudes. So if anyone scares me out of those two matchups, it would be Cal, even though they are the 15th seed in the ACC. They scare me a lot more than Stanford does.
Yeah, well, they've got Andrej Stojakovic as well, who is a guy that potentially, could either be a very high-level transfer this offseason if he were to go into the portal, or, potentially could look to go pro and play, could be a two-way guy in the NBA, potentially play overseas. So that they have some guys there. You're right. And then Jeremiah Wilkinson, right, just won ACC Sixth Man of the Year. He shot the ball awful against Louisville. I mean, he airballed like 4 threes. I mean, he just kept shooting. It's like me in 2K. Like, I'm not afraid to take this 3 that I've missed 5 times from here in a row. But for Louisville, there's definitely some weapons. Cal's got some talented pieces, a lot of transfers. You never know what could happen for a team who might win, 2 games in 2 days. We've seen, heck, look back to last year. Okay, so let's just say that you get past those teams, okay? In your opinion, knowing what you know about the matchup that Clemson, who is the 3 seed in this tournament, would have against Syracuse. Did Syracuse win? Is that who, or was it Florida State earlier? I should.
Syracuse, they're playing right now. Syracuse is up 56-49 with 4 minutes left to go. So it looks like they should win.
Sure. And then I'm assuming you would go with SMU there as the team to win that next game tomorrow. And then SMU and Clemson, talk to me. Who do you have coming out of that game? And then talk through the matchup for Louisville.
I mean, I think it could be either team. SMU has Boobie Miller back, so that does give them at least a chance in this game. But I think Clemson, along with us and Duke, like all three of these ACC teams, are really solid to great teams that I think are going to be real threats in the NCAA tournament and not just the ACC tournament. So if I had to make a prediction, it would certainly be Clemson coming out ahead. I mean, they got 5 dudes. Like, every single dude that's on that court, at least for their starting lineup, is a threat. Like, Chase Hunter, obviously a threat. 16 points a game, one of the best players in the ACC. Ian Shefflin, Victor Locken, who's like 7'4", Jaden Zachary, who's a defensive menace and a great playmaker, and even Chauncey Wiggins. Like, they're all threats. Like, there's not a single guy where you're like, okay, don't worry. Like, you play Stanford, don't worry about anyone else besides Maxime Reynaud and maybe Sellers, one other guy. With this team, there's 5 dudes you have to worry about. They're physical. They play good defense. They have shot makers. They rebound the ball well. They're big. Like, they don't really have a lot of weaknesses. I know Louisville ended up winning, was it by 8 or 10 points whenever we played them at home earlier in the year. So it looks on the scoreboard like it was a less competitive game than it was, but that was a really competitive game. And Chase Hunter, just like Maxime Reynaud, if he gets hot, there's not a shot he can't take and make. Like, he's one of those dudes that's super frustrating because you can play the perfect defense. Terrence Edwards can lock him up for 28 seconds, and all of a sudden he just goes step back, 17-foot fade away with a hand in his face, and it's cash. And you're just like, good Lord. Right. So yeah, Clemson for sure is a scary team to me. And one other thing I wanted to say, I definitely think we got the easiest draw we could have. Avoided a North Carolina team that's really hot. Avoided SMU. Wouldn't have to play Clemson until the semifinals. But it does suck from a tournament resume building standpoint that we only have one quad 1 opportunity, and it's either SMU or it's Clemson. And then obviously if we win that, then we could get Duke. Right. But it would have been awesome, in my opinion, if SMU and Stanford could have flip-flopped that 6-7. we could have played SMU in that next round, which is a more competitive game, but gives you another quad one win and allows us to elevate that resume.
Yeah, I mean, you got to go out there, honestly, if you get Stanford and you got to just, or Cal, either one of them, beat them by 30, 40 points, right? Like pulverize them. You want to make them pay.
And it still won't help your resume at all, and that's what sucks.
Right, exactly. But that game can hurt you more than it can help you. So you got to take care of business there. And then the same thing goes with a potential matchup with Clemson or SMU. I'm with you. I think SMU it can be a dangerous team depending on the health of Boobie Miller because they have him and Chuck Edwards and Harris and Aquendo and some of the other guys, Matt Cross. And the big guy. On. Right, exactly. And they have been certainly inconsistent, lost to Florida State the other night, but they're a team that on the right night with Andy Enfield as the coach can get hot and can, who knows? And then with Clemson, as you mentioned, I mean, Chase Hunter is arguably one of the best guards in the ACC. Jaden Zachary is probably the guard that you don't want guarding Chucky Hepburn the most, right? Like he is, I didn't see the rankings of who came behind Chucky Hepburn for defensive player of the year in the ACC, but I would imagine that it was probably Jaden Zachary. I mean, he's been one of the best defensive guards all season. Really, that game is all about can you slow down Hunter and can you slow down Shefflin like they did early in the season? Because I personally, and this is just my opinion, I don't think the rest of their team is that good. I mean, I know they have Zachary and Victor Locken has certainly played much better in the back half of the season than what he was when he was playing, injured and sick in the middle of the year. But I do think that Louisville can take care of business against Clemson. You always, worry about beating a team twice or three times, how difficult that can be. But I think this is a Louisville team that can, really give them some problems with their matchups as well. And we saw this was my favorite game of the year because this was the Javon Hadley 30-plus point game that nobody had coming, right? And that was because they could give Javon Hadley the ball and just let him go to work. And there was, not really great matchups for him out there with them playing Dylan Hunter and some of the other guards that they play in that lineup. So we'll see what the matchups look like. Let's just say you get to a final, and let's just hypothetically, I know this is whatever you want to call it, we're getting way ahead of ourselves, but we got to because we're a podcast that's going to only record probably one time before we get to this point. But let's just say that Louisville gets Duke in the final. How are you feeling about that? What are the thoughts on how a matchup might look in that case against arguably a potential 1 seed in Duke?
I mean, so we're assuming that obviously we beat either Clemson or SMU getting there. So we do already get one quad one win. So I think at that point, Louisville is playing with free money. We've got our extra quad one win, which we'll talk about later, I think gets us to a 5 seed. And really, you're not going to get punished if you lose to the number 1 ranked team in the nation. Just ask Kentucky. Every time they lose to a quad one team, it doesn't do anything to their resume. I'll let that subside. So to me, you're playing with free money. Duke is amazing. Duke is athletic. Duke is super physical. If they don't hit threes, I think Louisville has a decent chance. Or if Louisville shoots really well, I think in general we will be a competitive team in that game. But would we lose? Was it 12? Did we lose by 12 last time we played them at home?
Something like that. Hold on. I just had it up here. Let me see if I can filibuster and pull that score. They lost by 11.
11. Okay. So 11. Right. I mean, I think we will make it a competitive game. PK is too good of a coach to get blown out. This team is too strong and playing too well to allow themselves to get blown out, no matter, in my opinion, the talent. But I do think it would be unlikely if that Louisville would be able to beat this team. Is just when is the last time Duke lost? I mean, they're beating every ACC team by 20-plus points, it seems like. So they are on a roll. I think your biggest thing is that you're hoping that they miss a lot of threes, and which is something they have done. And when they do miss threes, they do struggle against better teams. So that would be the hope. Yeah. But yeah, I think Louisville would be likely to lose. But at that point, you're playing with free money. You've already got your quad one win. You've already helped the resume. And losing to Duke is not going to hurt you. Yeah,
just be competitive. Obviously I want to go out and win that basketball game. And if you do, then you're talking about Louisville potentially in a completely different manner going into the tournament. But for Duke, they haven't lost since they played Clemson, what was that, 9 games ago? So, I mean, this is a super hot Duke team that, we'll see how things go, right? They got to win a couple of tough games and potentially with obviously would they get Wake Forest, but would they have to play North Carolina or would Wake Forest have to beat North Carolina?
So Wake Forest would play North Carolina And then the winner of
Yeah.
that would assumedly play Duke in the semis.
Yeah. Okay. So North Carolina would have to beat Notre Dame, and then assuming that they do that, they would get Wake Forest in the quarterfinals, which the winner of that would go on to play Duke. So either way, Duke's got to beat a good Wake Forest team, or they've got to potentially knock off North Carolina for the third time this season, which again can be a challenge no matter who you are. But for that game, I think that obviously Duke is one of, if not the most talented team in the country, with Cooper Flagg and Con Knippel. And I think that those two obviously are two guys that can carry Duke to a championship without really any of the other guys on the floor having to step up and make much of an impact. However, with their big man, the freshman who's going to be a top 15 pick, and then the kid that has really been coming on for them as of late, the freshman Isaiah Evans, I think he's the X factor for Duke, honestly. But I think Louisville matches up well, even without some of the pieces that they're missing, assuming that Rain Smith is healthy. And if Louisville shoots the ball well, plays physical and rebounds, makes Cooper Flagg have to have multiple looks, give him Javon Hadley, give him, Abubakar Traore, throw some different bodies at him, and really muck it up the way a Cal did to you, way a Stanford did to you. And maybe you never know what might happen, in terms of winning that. And again, if you're an ACC champion, now I don't think that's going to necessarily mean much this season, unfortunately. I don't think it's going to benefit really anyone if you're the ACC champion, but nonetheless, it would be a huge accomplishment year one for Pat Kelsey. It would obviously really be a signal to the rest of college basketball that Louisville is back. And then from a tournament standpoint, Jake, I mean, you mentioned that from a seeding perspective, you think Louisville right now is about a 6? That's 6-7 is where you kind of see them commonly projected in the bracketologist reports and what they're putting out now almost at a daily rate. But say you do win the ACC title, you said you maybe can get up to a 5, maybe can get up to a 4. I mean, you just never know. What realistically, like you said, you think Louisville's not necessarily going to knock off Duke, but what do you think Louisville, when their name is called on Selection Sunday, what their seed is going to be?
I think we're a 5 seed, and I think that is the case as long as we win against SMU or Clemson. I don't think that requires us winning the ACC championship. As long as you don't lose to Stanford or Cal in that first game, and then you get a quad 1 win against Clemson or SMU, I think we move to a 5 seed. There are 7 metrics that the NCAA tournament looks at when it comes to comparing resumes and how they're seeding teams. It's the Bart Torvik, net, wins above bubble, Ken Pom, strength of record, BPI, which is a joke of a ranking, and KPI. If you average out Louisville's rankings in all of those, Louisville averages out as the 20th best team in the nation, which would be, and that's right now. That's before a quad 1 win. That's before making it to the ACC championship. So that would put us in right now as the last 5 seed. I know I've seen a lot of bracketologists that are saying 7-6, but I'm seeing more 6 right now with a quad 1 win against Clemson, bumping us up to a 5 seed, and then another quad 1 win against the best team in the nation, moving us up to probably even a 4 seed. So that's what I think. Now, if we lose to California, if we lose to Clemson or SMU, that's where you're looking at 6-7. But I think most likely we're looking at a 5 or better.
I would love that. I mean, obviously, I want the highest seed possible. Want to avoid the 7-8, which is like dangerously where I feel like they could put Louisville just because of the ACC and, the fact that that conference in comparison to some of the others doesn't measure up in terms of the teams top to bottom. But I don't think that you can take away from what Louisville has done, what Pat Kelsey has done in year one. And honestly, I think whether they're a 5 or a 6, depending on matchups, I think Louisville can make a Sweet 16 and then, maybe go as far as an Elite 8. I don't necessarily think they're a Final Four team. I've asked this question to Presley a couple times. How does Louisville match up with the Auburns and Alabamas and Floridas and some of those programs? And I'm not sure that Louisville is in that caliber or even, right behind it. But I do think that Louisville, the right matchups, can capture the momentum. And obviously, we'll have the support of this fan base, and I think they can be dangerous in the NCAA tournament. I really do. what do you think? I mean, obviously we can't see the future, but you're filling out your bracket and you're trying to win some money. Like realistically, like how would you kind of feel about this team right now and how far you might advance them? Because there's years as Louisville fans we're like, oh, all the way. I don't care who the matchups are, Louisville all the way. But realistically, if you're filling out a bracket to win some money, Jake, how far are you taking Louisville?
I think it depends on the matchups, obviously. I think Sweet 16 is extremely attainable for this team. And I mean, once you make a Sweet 16, it's not much less likely to make an Elite Eight or even a Final Four. Now, once you get into the Final Four, it seems to be a lot harder because you're likely playing against Auburn, Duke, Florida,
right?
Someone like that. But I think I just want Louisville to avoid the 1 and 2 seeds before the Sweet 16. That is my ideal. That is my hope, because those 1s and those 2 seeds I think are elite. But I think once you start getting down into those 3s and those 4s, that's where, I mean, obviously they're good teams, but there's a lot less fear in my mind when it comes to, man, I just don't know how we match up against this team. Like physically, athletically, like I don't know how we do it. I love our team. I love our coaching staff, but we are not as physical as Auburn. We've seen we are not as physical as Tennessee. There are teams that just unfortunately will be larger than us, will be stronger than us, will be faster than us. So there are some teams, 1 and 2 seeds, that I would be concerned about. So yeah, I think if you can, I mean, you're a 5 seed, you play a 12 seed in round 1, assumedly win that, then you play a 4 seed, would feel perfectly fine with that. Even same if you're a 6 seed, then you play a 3 seed in the second round. I think that feels good. Once you get to that 7 line, and then you got to play a 2, you got to play Alabama, you got to play Tennessee, you got to play Florida. A team like that, that's where it would start to get scary. And to me, then I'm likely picking them to bounce out in the round of 32.
Yeah, I think that's a very fair assessment. There's 3 things that I'm confident in going into this tournament. One is Chucky Hepburn. I believe wholeheartedly that that's the guy you want leading your team on the floor as a point guard. 2, I think the world is going to be introduced to some Pat Kelsey celebrations. I think you're going to see that montage in the, man, why am I blanking on the song, man? One Shining Moment. How did I not think of that quicker? And then number 3 is Louisville's going to shoot the ball so freaking good on the road. Like, that's just what they do, right? I mean, all year long, we've seen it. Louisville, depending on where they get matched up, go out there and you can just be on a business trip, get away from the distractions, and hopefully, shoot the ball, shoot the lights out, and get Rain Smith back out there. I feel pretty confident in those things.
So any closing thoughts? Exhibition rims out there?
Yeah, right, exactly. I would love that. I would also love one of the teams that we play, like in the first round, to look and play like one of those teams. That would help us out a lot and would also help my nerves out. But I can't emphasize enough how excited I am about March basketball. Like, it is the talk of the office. It is the talk at the kids' practices and the gym. It's the talk with your buddies at the bar. Like, it is real life that Louisville basketball is going to play in the NCAA tournament for the first time since 2019. I know obviously they missed the tournament the year that potentially could have had a really dangerous team under Chris Mack because of the COVID and pandemic situation, but Louisville will be back in the tournament. And we'll obviously see where things go in the ACC tournament. As you mentioned, you win a couple of games, man, and you just never know. The matchups could fall in your favor, or you also never know what that 11 seed might look like, coming out of a first 4 matchup, or maybe what, you just never know.
They're gonna give us fucking Drake. I already know it. It's gonna be Drake in round 1, who's like the toughest mid-major team of any you can play, and then it's gonna be St. John's or Kentucky in round 2. I already know it. Or it's gonna be Arkansas. So it's gonna be Arkansas or Drake in round 1, and then it's going to be St. John's or Kentucky in round 2. One of those 4 teams is going to be directly next to us in the bracket.
I believe that. I could see that. There's a couple of dangerous mid-major teams. I know you mentioned Drake, UNC Wilmington. Today got a big win. McNeese, I wouldn't want to play them. Not only is their basketball team good, but the aura of their manager is just off the charts.
Unmatched.
Like, I thought we had cool GAs and managers, but my gosh, man, that kid's a shining star so far. So what is the last thing here, and then we'll get out of here, and what's the thing that you're most excited about, like Selection Sunday, ACC tournament? Like, what's going through your mind? Obviously want to win the basketball games, but like what are you excited for?
I mean, I can't remember being this excited for a tournament, or at least a conference tournament, since 2014 we won the AAC. I mean, ever since we've been in the ACC, we haven't
Got
really
bounced.
gone anywhere in these conference tournaments. And I mean, obviously
Right.
that still could happen this year, but I mean, it's been since probably 2013 I've been truly this excited, because that was when it was the Big East. That's when it was electric to go play in the Garden and win. So I'm excited just to be in the ACC tournament, be in a quarterfinal, play in a semifinal, be that standalone game on Friday night, be that standalone game on Saturday against Duke, have the whole entire nation talking about you. You have a lot of college basketball insiders talking about Louisville, like, wow, they've won 17 out of the last 18, 9 in a row, all this, but the casual fan probably still thinks more of Louisville as the team that won 12 games the last 2 years than they do the team that's 25-6 this year. So I'm excited to put the nation on notice a little bit, hopefully. And
Right.
and like we said, these ACC tournament games can be make or break. This is the difference between us losing to Clemson and being a 7 seed, and we've got to play Alabama or we've got to play Tennessee in round 2 of the NCAA tournament,
Right. No, thank you.
or we go and we win, we beat Clemson, we beat it, or we beat SMU, maybe we beat Duke, and we're a 5 seed. And then now we're looking at, I don't even know, who's a likely 4 seed right now. I was gonna say like Iowa State, who's kind of trending off, a Michigan.
Yeah.
Like, imagine getting to play
Yeah.
Michigan. Michigan fucking sucks.
Maryland.
They don't actually,
Yeah.
but they are overrated. So like
Sure.
that's the difference. Like, win these games and you go from playing Michigan State, Tennessee, or St. John's or Texas Tech in round 2 to getting a drop down. You're playing Michigan, you're playing Maryland, Oregon, Iowa State, Memphis, somebody like that. So these games are exciting and they mean so much to this team. So I can't wait. It's cool to have fun March basketball back and not dreadful, God, make this season end March basketball happen.
Right. For the last 2 years at this point, we've been doing transfer portal episodes already. Like, that's been the name of the game, man. We haven't even gotten a chance to talk March basketball.
Oh, yeah. We would have been talking about the North Dakota transfer. Do you see the guy who dropped 50? You think
right.
Kenny could wheel him in?
Yeah, right. Exactly. No, like, spoiler alert. Yeah, exactly. So it's there's certainly a ton to be excited about. And as you mentioned, there's an opportunity to be talking about Louisville. And the last thing here on the show that I want to talk about, sadly, is the news in Louisville today. The passing of Louisville legend Junior Bridgman, who passed away sadly after suffering a medical emergency at a speaking engagement on Tuesday, March 11th, the day we're recording this podcast. And I would imagine that most of our listeners are super familiar with who that is and what that name means to not only Louisville basketball, but to the city of Louisville, to the game of basketball, to the NBA. He was not an all-time great at Louisville basketball, but was a huge integral part of the 1975 Final Four team. Went on to play 12 season with the Bucks in the NBA. Was a 6-man award winner. So a guy who had a very prestigious career. But if you ask anybody what they know about Junior Bridgman, Jake, they're likely to mention what he did off the court, more so as an entrepreneur, and more importantly, the philanthropist who really believed in building up others around him and leaving the world better off than the way that he found it. Being able to give back to areas of the city of Louisville that have been underserved and have been underprivileged for a very long time, and investing to make this city great and to grow it into something special. And, obviously, at State of Louisville, we believe that this is the greatest place on earth, the city of Louisville, the state of Louisville, and people like Junior Bridgman are the reason that is. So our prayers and condolences go to his family. We know his impact will be felt for many generations, just as he has preached in his long times being a speaker for the NBA and for their young players. And Jake, you hear the statements that are being given today, not just in Louisville, but Adam Silver, Shaquille O'Neal, some of the greats in the NBA, talking about his impact on the game and his impact on their life and what he's meant. So it is a great loss to this community. It is a great loss to the game of basketball. And so tonight we end the show thanking Junior Bridgman for his dedication to this city, dedicating his career from a college and professional standpoint to the city of Louisville and supporting that, and for leaving a great legacy. He will truly be missed. So as I mentioned, prayers to his family and condolences to them. We thank you for tuning into the show. We hope you subscribe to the YouTube channel, and we will be back to talk more ball. Make sure you tune in to the Floyd Street Media live streams over the course of the coming days. A lot of great content. But until next time, go Guards.